Welcome into another Pax What She Said recap episode. It is another Victory Monday. We've had so many of these. We're a very, very lucky fan base. Packers defeated the Seahawks yesterday evening, 17-0. The defense pitched a shutout. Russel Wilson came to Lambeau, his first start in about a month since his finger injury, and they did not score a single point. And the Packers are now 8-2. One of our co-hosts, hello Maggie, was actually at the game. Lucky girl, snow game at Lambeau looks so magical. So before we dive into it, how was it?
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, we were in one of the end zones, a tunnel side, north side end zone, and it was just great. I mean, thankfully the two AJ Dillon touchdowns came our way, but not a lot of action in the first half. Snow started to come down really heavy in the second half, which made it, a real snow globe atmosphere. It was cute. Eric Stokes post game was talking about how it was his first snow game, but some of the team wasn't going to let it count as a snow game because there wasn't snow on the field and the ground, but he's still going to count it, as a Georgia Bulldog, that snow is significant once you hit Wisconsin for the first time. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's so fun. I would love to see a snow game, except that I also don't want to sit outside in the cold. It's like a real double-edged sword, but that is awesome. It just looks magical when the bowl has like all the snow coming down. You posted a photo. It's just amazing.
It is. It feels like you're in a snow globe because the wind has to circulate a certain way once you get like under the stadium level. So yeah, maybe somebody will have a suite and they'll let us come up for a playoff game and you can see the snow with your eyes, but not have to sit outside in the.
I wouldn't necessarily mind. I did the Giants Packers game when the Packers came in, I think it was 2019 season. Yeah, 2019. And it was snowing. It was me and my dad in December. And I don't remember it being horrible. The Packers won 31-13. We left a little early in the fourth quarter because we were cold, but we made it through the game. It's worth it. It's worth it. So speaking of Eric Stokes, we got to talk about this defense. There's not like a whole lot to say about the offense, and I think we'll get there, but like, man alive, this defense is out of their minds. I mean, there were so many stats all day, and I think many of them are worth mentioning. But I think the biggest thing, my takeaway, right, is the Packers have faced Kyler Murray, Patrick Mahomes, and Russell Wilson over the past 3 weeks and have only given up 601 yards, 1 touchdown, and have had 4 takeaways in the last 3 games. And I just think by all accounts, you can look at completion percentages, yards per attempt, all of that, but you can't ask for much more against some of the youngest and most talented quarterbacks in the league.
Yeah, and I mean, thinking of the quarterbacks too, it's their mobility, right? Like you could argue that, Big Ben has a decent arm. Some of the other quarterbacks that they've gone up against this season have had the arm talent to make them a challenge, but the mobility that the quarterbacks have had, and that's kind of been the Achilles heel of a lot of Packer defenses over the years, harkening all the way back to like Colin Kaepernick, who always had the Packers number, and Russell Wilson has scrambled really well against them. Justin Fields looks like he can be that kind of quarterback in the division. So to have a team that's able to contain the run and has been all season and really limits kind of the ability of those quarterbacks to scramble, I think is huge. And, considering some of the quarterbacks that they might see in the playoffs will go a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you look at what some of these quarterbacks, Russell Wilson's been out, but like Patrick Mahomes just dropped 40 plus on the Raiders. So it's not like, the Packers held him to 13 points. Like there's a lot to be said for what they're doing. And I mean, we've been talking about it, I think, for weeks. This is just like this continued ascension and coming back at the right time. I mean, unfortunately, again, there were injuries. And I think that's just to be expected at this point. Packers are going to have to look at outside linebacker and edge rush a little bit more now that Whitney Merciless, I think, is going to be out for the season. But everyone continues to step up, especially in the secondary. I thought that there was a really interesting rotation going on with basically Kevin King and Rasul Douglas getting snaps and rotating out, and Eric Stokes basically getting to stay in for every snap except one. this game. And then Jair is going to come back, and they're just going to they have Chandon Sullivan, just a plethora of DBs for Joe Barry to use in various situations. So it's so exciting. The Packers, I mean, we were talking about this pre-show. I was talking to my dad, like the Packers haven't had a defense like this really since like 09, 2010 and the Super Bowl run.
Yeah, and I'm not to like make fun of the people that were sitting behind me. That's not what the intent of this is, but it's kind of funny like when you think about the season as a whole. Whitney Merciless had his first sack, and somebody behind me went, "Who the hell is number 50?" And like Tyler Davis on offense caught that little kind of quick out. And somebody went, "Who the hell is 84?" And I think that's like the mantra of this team is like, you don't even know half the names half the time because, it's a Packers team that really has bought into the next man up mentality. And it really is unfortunate now that Whitney Merciless looks like he has a torn biceps and will probably be out the remainder of the season because he could have had 2 sacks. Matt LaFleur said, that second sack where he tore the bicep, it looked like that was also going to be a sack until Russell Wilson kind of squirted out of that one. But just really unfortunate when you have guys like Rasul Douglas stepping up, guys that weren't even on the team and are making such significant contributions.
I also on my couch was like, who the heck is 84? Like I was like, who is that? Yeah, I mean, we both did our rewatch today before the show, like we always do, and I was so incredibly impressed with Rasul Douglas's play. I mean, he had, I think, at least by my count, 4 really like meaningful plays on defense that got the defense off the field. Going up against, look, I know that maybe they didn't produce or the Seahawks offense hasn't been what it was, but going up against Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf is no small feat. Like that is one of the best 1-2 wide receiver duos in the league, especially getting Russell Wilson back. Anything could have happened, right? And there were some apologists around saying, oh, no, his finger, blah, blah, but you don't know that going into the game. And I don't think that has anything to do with why the Seahawks lost anyway. Like I think that the Packers played really, really well against this offense, against this wide receiver core, and really shut them down.
I mean, when you're rehabbing for 19 hours a day, you really should have everything under control at that point. But no, I mean, I think I love too that, if I've been listening to the post-game pressers to get my article ready for tomorrow for She Said TV, but all of the defensive players pretty much every week for the last like 5 weeks, the first thing that they say is credit to Joe Barry. Like they were like, he has us feeling so confident. We're happy about the scheme every week. Kevin King was talking about how like when you trust guys to the left and right of you, it makes such a difference because then you don't have to overcompensate for anything or try and do more than your share. Like he's like, football is the ultimate team sport, right? And there's 11 of us and 11 of them. And if you know that the other 10 guys are going to do their part, it makes it so much easier for you to just like hone in on what you're doing. And I think Joe Barry's done a really good job of getting his guys to do just that and like just enough at their specific spot.
Yeah, and I think it also is, and I think we've given a lot of credit to Devondre Campbell for his play on the field, but I think there needs to be credit also for the level of communication. He's taking what Joe Barry is calling and he's communicating with them, and clearly that level of communication is working well, and they know exactly what they need to do before the ball is snapped, and they're executing it at a very, very high level. I feel like I have so much more to say about the secondary, but the pass rush also really showed up this game. They had 32 pressures, which is a season high. And that just sounds bonkers to me when you say that, 32 pressures. I mean, they beat up on the Seahawks offensive line. And I think Kenny and Preston both had 8. Rashawn had 4. Rashawn had 2 sacks. He's already hit his season high, and it's only what we're going into week 10. Now, I think it sounds like his injury is not as serious as it looked, which is really good because the lights have been turned on. And with the idea of potentially getting Zadarius back, I mean, they're getting to the quarterback.
Yeah, and I mean, even like a lot of the containment, we talked about the Packers being one of the best tackling teams in the NFL right now. But like Jonathan Garvin had a really nice tackle to save a first down when a running back kind of snuck out for Seattle. So I think just the idea that like the gang tackling and getting to the ball, they're really being gap disciplined, which we didn't see a lot of with the tail end of Mike Pettin, where it just feels like everybody is so assignment sound that even if it feels like the play is there to be made, like they just stay true to what they're supposed to be doing. And it's really showing up.
Yeah, and I feel like you mentioned it earlier with these mobile quarterbacks. Like Russell Wilson is absolutely one of those mobile quarterbacks, not just from running up the field, but scrambling and continuing, elongating plays because of his scramble ability, and the containment aspect of this Packers front was exactly why he could barely get the ball down the field, is because they were really closing in on him and he just couldn't make those throws. He was really off in terms of like accuracy because I think of all of that pressure in his face.
Yeah, and I mean the Seattle offense was so interesting going into this game because they were terrible on third and fourth downs, but if they could sustain a drive, they were like second in the league in red zone offense. So I think we kind of saw a lot of that where they weren't able to get things going, but once they did get into a rhythm, thankfully that's when the Packers defense stepped up the most and improved their own red zone defensive percentage. Now with 2 picks, you mentioned obviously on
Yeah,
Twitter that Adrian Amos could have had about
3.
4 himself. I gave Henry Black a shout out. You gave Rasul Douglas a shout out earlier. Like just the secondary play in general. Kevin King getting his pick after having a PBU last week that arguably could have been another interception. It's impressive. I mean, this
Yeah.
defense through 10 weeks, we just talked about it on Twitter, is already tied their entire season's output from last season as far as interceptions with 11. So it's showing up in big ways.
It really is. And I think we both feel like you can't rely on turnovers. Like that's a very like unreliable way to play defense. But I think it goes to what you said earlier, which is everyone is executing and doing their assignments as needed. And because of that, they're actually in place to make plays on the ball more often than they were in the last couple of seasons. They just have to kind of close in on some of them. Like Amos literally had 3. Like they were in, the other 2 that he didn't catch were in his hands. And those will come around. I think when you're in the right place at the right time, like they will come around really quick. I just also want to touch on Eric Stokes because there was a stat that was going around today that look, he's a rookie. It's so rare, especially at cornerback, to have a rookie perform in like the way that he is. And last night he played 47 coverage snaps. He was targeted 4 times and allowed 0 receptions and 0 yards. And when I saw that, I thought, who does that remind me of? Jair Alexander. Like that is a straight Jair Alexander stat line. And the idea that Jair is going to come back this season to have 2 boundary corners, and even, we've talked about it where you can move Jaw around, you can play anywhere along that secondary, but to have 2 reliable boundary guys, like they're going to shut things down, especially against teams potentially in the playoffs who are obviously going to be the best offenses in the league.
Yeah, and I mean, even looking at offenses, coming up or that we're expecting the Packers to see in the playoffs could be the Cardinals again, who have not just 1 wide receiver, but 3 or 4 really talented wide receivers. The offenses that spread the ball around. Cowboys are another example of that, really spreading the ball around to that wide receiving core. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to go around, and I want to give Kevin King some credit too because he just, I don't know if it's, I think Joe Barry's playing a little more press man. But we still see him play off ball a little bit, which, don't love. But I thought a really good example of this even was going back to last week. He's doing a really good job of keeping things in front of him. Yeah. We saw it with Tyreek Hill. Like he's making tackles inbounds, really, or if he doesn't think he can make the tackle, he's doing a good job of keeping the players in front of him until the rest of the squad can get there. And I mean, it's showing up. And, obviously he had the pick. So just holistically, the secondary is playing lights out. And it's weird to think about the fact that, you add Jair, you add Zadarius Smith. Not that you can have too many cooks when your defense is, losing pieces every week, but it's kind of funny to think about like, where will you fit them in? I know the starters are going to come back and start, but so many guys have stepped up in such big ways. It's hard to think about them losing opportunities given how well they've all played.
Well, I think it's nice to know also that there's less pressure on their return. Let's say like Zadarius Smith has a back injury. You don't want to put him back in there for the majority of snaps. You can rotate him in now because he's not necessarily needed on 4 downs, right? Same with Jair. If they want to kind of rotate him in and make sure that his shoulder is feeling okay, they have Rasul Douglas who they can rotate. Same with Kevin King, Chandon Sullivan, etc. So I think it actually makes the thought of their returns, that transition is going to be a lot smoother because they're not going to just need them to, start 100 snaps, right? 100% of snaps right away.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's true with like David Bakhtiari. We kind of thought maybe he'd come back after the mini bye. against KC. That didn't happen. Then we're like, okay, maybe they're saving him for the Seahawks game. That didn't happen. I do think he will come back finally against the Vikings. But, the play of like having Elton Jenkins gives you so much versatility that even though some of the interior guys were getting beat up a little bit, especially against the Chiefs, knowing now that you have David Bakhtiari coming back and it wasn't a rushed operation. It was something that, you let heal fully. Same with Aaron Jones. Unfortunately, obviously had the MCL injury that looked pretty serious when it happened. The fact that it could be a 1 or 2 week thing, and knowing the Packers have a week 13 bye now, and knowing just the Packers operation in general and how kind of protective they are with injuries, giving him 2 weeks he misses, then has the bye, he'll have a longer opportunity to heal up and get really healthy for the most important stretch of the season.
Right. And that's the whole thing is that, barring any more, knock on wood, like they are going to start getting healthier. Anything left on the defense? I have a thought about Adrian Amos that I want your input on.
Yeah, you've teased it, so I would like to hear it.
Teased it to you. Okay, so I was thinking about this all day, and my take is that I think of all 4 of the 2019 free agent signings, I think Adrian Amos should be, if there's going to be one, it should be him that gets re-signed when his contract is up. And the reason I think that is, one, because first off, I think Za'Darius, he wants an extension, but I don't know if the Packers have the money to keep him. And I think this injury calls into question like whether they should keep him, which I know makes you sad, and I'm sorry. I think with Preston, actually, his product on the field this season might like outbid what the Packers can pay him if he wanted to return, right? They're really cap strapped. So I think potentially he's playing really well that another team might sign him for more money if that was an option. I don't know if he'd do another deal like he did with the Packers, but he's playing well enough that I don't think he would need to. And then with Billy Turner, Billy Turner is really solid. He's been really solid and I think has flown under the radar this year as super solid. But the Packers just drafted a ton of really young offensive linemen that undoubtedly they're trying to develop instead of re-signing someone to more money. So if there's one, right, Amos is playing incredibly solid. Him and Savage, I think, are still one of the best safety duos in the league. He likely won't need to garner a huge contract, right? I think some safeties are starting to make big money. I'm not sure that he's going to be one of them that's going to. And he's only 28. So, you could give him another kind of 3-year deal, get him to kind of that 31 range and still get, I think, a couple more like really nice seasons out of him, especially because I think the depth behind them is so much more questionable than any of those other position groups.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Rashawn Gary is going to be the guy for the Packers for a while in the edge unit, and deservedly so. I mean, they drafted him high. Obviously, there's an expectation there that he will play long-term. His product on the field has certainly been ascending. Z is tough. I mean, Jacob Westendorf always says, I've never known anyone that had a back injury, right? Like it's, even if you get surgery for it, it's not something that you can ever like close a chapter on. You don't just all of a sudden have a really good back, even if that is kind of the hope or the expectation. And I think, he might potentially be pricing himself out of Green Bay. Preston, I could see coming back if they're going to re-sign one of the two because his contract will be smaller. It'll be hard to get rid of either of them just because of the way that they, are on the field. They're locker room leaders. Aaron Rodgers and Preston Smith are like super close, which is interesting. But I think, like to your point about Billy Turner too, you've got a couple options at right tackle. Yash Nyman could slide over and be your right tackle of the future if David Bakhtiari is obviously left tackle of the future. You've got Elton Jenkins. They were joking with him about, do you want to make tackle money instead of guard money? Because obviously tackle money is more. But yeah, I mean, thankfully the Packers don't have to figure that one out for a little while still. But yeah, I do think it's Adrian Amos. And I think especially without Jair this year, like wasn't he nominated captain? He was captain for a reason. And just the experience. I know Kevin King is older now. He's been in the league a significant amount of time, but having a vet present like Adrian Amos, who, when Tremont left, joked like, guys, I'm still young. You don't have to call me the old head in the room, like just because I'm 27 or 28. But yeah, I mean, I think he makes the most sense for sure.
Cool. That is my Adrian Amos take. Also, just I love a guy with like quiet confidence. I think there's like locker rooms can have a lot of really loud voices, and there's something about the way that he carries himself. Like you said, he definitely is a leader. He just leads in a different style, and I think that diversity is really important. Okay, I think it's offense time. There's
Yeah.
not really a ton to say because they didn't score until the fourth quarter, but it was great to see AJ Dillon shine again in the snow.
Yeah. And I mean, even Matt LaFleur had said, like, in his post game, like, if there's people right now in the league that are sleeping on AJ Dillon and his ability as a pass catcher, like, a couple more games like this, and their eyes are going to be wide open. I think that was my favorite play of the game, was his catch that should have been like a 10-yard gain that ended up being 50 yards. And he just kind of tiptoed. You don't expect guys of his size to be able to walk a tightrope like that.
Yeah.
And just, I mean, I don't have the numbers up in front of me, but he has to have been up there as far as potentially being one of the most productive receiving threats in that game. Not to mention, obviously, carrying the load, unfortunately, with, you know, Aaron Jones getting hurt, but 128 total yards, 2 touchdowns. That's the kind of stuff they're going to need from him, especially these next couple of weeks if Aaron Jones is unable to play, which obviously he won't be until potentially after the bye.
Yeah. I mean, I think AJ Dillon is both a combination of, right, agile enough to make those tippy toes, but also large enough that you can't bring him down. Like it took like 4 different guys attempting to tackle him. I think he had like 128 yards from scrimmage. I don't know if it's probably combined receiving and rushing, but yeah, I saw today that he's top 10 in the league from 4 running backs for yards from scrimmage. He's like number 6 or 7, which comes as a surprise to me considering he's not like the workhorse, right? The Packers have a decent rotation with Aaron Jones. I think arguably Aaron Jones takes more snaps than AJ Dillon does. So it just goes to show like what kind of back he can be in Aaron Jones' absence for the next couple of weeks. He just, I don't know, I guess he just comes alive when the snow starts to fall.
Yeah, and it's funny. I think one of my bold predictions going into this season was that AJ Dillon and Aaron Jones would combine for 25 rushing touchdowns. They're not really looking like they're going to hit that. Aaron Jones has 9 and AJ Dillon has 2, but if you count in every touchdown, then we're looking a little more closely, since Aaron Jones has been a weapon in the passing game as well significantly. And now, of course, we're seeing AJ Dillon do that. Curious, if they're going to put Aaron Jones on injured reserve, you would think they'd have to make some type of move, just because obviously they're without Kylan Hill for the season. Patrick Taylor was elevated, had a couple snaps on offense, which was fun to see, but
Yeah.
nothing too significant. So if AJ Dillon is going to be the every down workhorse, they're going to want at least a third body in the room at this point.
Yeah, I was going to ask actually. So it's Patrick Taylor, of course, will be running back 2 now, but is there anyone on the practice squad that they can pull up?
I'm not sure.
I don't think so. So maybe they'll work out a couple of running backs and see who they can bring in. Maybe they'll pull Dexter Williams off whatever practice squad he's on right now, just because he's familiar with the offense.
I was going to say he was with the Giants, but I think they got rid of him.
The Browns right now.
Interesting. Look at that.
So yeah, that could be interesting. Although I guess the Browns need the running backs as well. Yeah, it was really fun to see Patrick Taylor. He played great in his limited snaps. It's gonna be really fun to see him have a higher workload. He deserves it. Couple more things on offense. Rodgers was off. Do you think it was just lack of practice?
I think it could have been that, and I think there's some fatigue there. Obviously from COVID, Devontae had said it, that he was feeling kind of sluggish. I'm sure that was a big part of it, and I'm not trying to get into like the political side of any of this, but I think there could have been a part of him that even subconsciously, like on the McAfee show, he was like, look, what if the offense is introduced and people boo you? So I'm wondering if there is a part of Rodgers that was like kind of anxious to go back out there and, turn the narrative back to football and not everything else. It was a long couple weeks that he was dealing with mentally. So I think part of that could have altered the way that he was prepping for the game, just because there's so many other factors that you're thinking of before you get to just go put on the helmet and play.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't get live snaps, and so like he probably was just really out of whack between being sick, even if you're asymptomatic, you're still your body's still fighting a virus, and not being in the building until basically game day. I mean, it's fair. We'll be very curious to see how he looks against the Vikings after a full week of practice. I think if he's back to, kind of his normal caliber of play, then there we go. But his deep ball, again, has been a bit of an issue this whole season. So I don't know what that is, although it was really nice to see MVS get back in there with that 40-plus yard catch. Thought Allen Lazard should have come down with a couple of those balls. They felt catchable to me, but also felt like, to be honest, Rodgers was missing a couple open guys. So, again, it could have just been lack of preparation, but the offense was really out of sync.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a part of it too with the decision making, and I don't know if it kind of goes into the back of their heads where I can't remember which player said it. I think it was Elton Jenkins actually, who was talking about how, the last couple seasons they're putting up 30 plus points a game and the defense is giving up points. And he's like, now the defense is keeping us in games because we're going scoreless in the first quarter and having to kind of find rhythm. They didn't, it was 3-0 at the half. It was like, what is going on for this offense? So I don't know if that's part of it where Aaron is feeling like the pressure to get the offense going, knowing that they were the number one offense in football last season. But the pick in the end zone was weird. He's normally really cautious with the football, especially in the red zone where you can score points. So I thought that was interesting. And yeah, I mean, I think just some of the decision making in general. But I did like that Matt LaFleur stuck with the runs, especially in the red zone at the goal line. I know, they talked about with the Cardinals in the stack box, if there's 9 guys in the box, you're not going to try and run the ball. But even just now seeing AJ Dillon's done it twice, it'll make defenses think about it. And that's really what the entire Matt LaFleur scheme is.
Right.
We saw Cobb kind of leak out on a screen early. Then they ran that same exact play and it ended up being like a handoff to someone else. So just those little looks that are going to keep the defenses guessing. I love that he does that every week.
I agree. I love, again, the commitment to the run in that scenario. And, Devontae still had quietly like a very nice game. I think he had 7 catches for like 80 yards around. So no slouch, came up with some big plays, and just stick with AJ Dillon until, there were 2 right before Aaron Jones went down. I know we're not doing plays this week, like we normally do, but I think it was 2 screens just like to Aaron Jones that ended up for like really big chunk plays. And they'd been trying to get some of that stuff going and it just hadn't been working. Then finally it hits and you rip off a big run and it ends up being, a long, I don't remember if that was the interception drive or it ended up, I think that was the interception drive, but it still ends up being that, you're moving the ball down the field in the right way. I'm wondering, and this could be off, but I'm wondering if as you lose guys and there's such a rotation happening, I mean, there's like really barely any tight end play at this point without Bobby, if that's also affecting it, because tight end is so important for this Matt LaFleur offense. And you're getting Josiah in places that he, is very new to him. Obviously, of Mercedes Lewis, but like we said, we had 84 in there. I don't even remember his name. I'm blanking on it right now.
Tyler Davis,
thank you. Like first game ever. So like that rotation as well of just not being completely familiar. You saw Aaron like chew out Josiah DeGuara like mid-game for not doing something right. So I think there's also a level of that, just like getting up to speed. When you lose someone, unfortunately, that's so incredibly integral to the way this offense runs.
Yeah, and I think one of the hard parts with all of this too is I was talking to Mark at the game. I was like, it's so foreign as a fan to be sitting here feeling better when the defense is on the field than the offense. We're just not used to that. Like, I'm like, okay, they're going to get a stop. And then, there's like the back of your mind that's like, oh shit, it's the offense now. Just please not a 3 and out. And, the first field goal attempt obviously was missed. That was so strange. Right before the kick, I'm like, swear to God, if they miss this. And then, that's what happens. And, I don't know if that's kind of going into the offense as well, where they're feeling this added pressure where they can't rely when they get down inside the 40. They really want to get into the end zone because they're not trusting the operation as much. So I think there's a lot like on the mental side as well that has to get cleaned up. Yes, the physical operation, something has got to give at this point. Special teams is, you can't go into the playoffs missing that many field goals and in close games expecting to win. But I think maybe a lot of that is contributing where there's like an onus now where the defense has been so good that the offense and everybody else just feels like, they need to get things going, and maybe they're forcing it a little bit.
Yeah, I think I agree. I hope it starts clicking, but then eventually, it's like week 10 and it's like, when's it going to start clicking? I don't think they have a single game over 27 points. They haven't scored 30 plus yet this season.
The Packers?
Yeah. I don't think they have. It would be sweet if it was against the Vikings next week.
Would be enjoyable.
Yeah. But I mean, it doesn't matter when your defense is playing the way that they are. You can win games, scoring 17 points.
They put up 35 against the Lions.
Did they really? Week 2?
35-17.
We were at.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
well, I must
it's
have
been a while.
So hype. Okay, that's good. That's good. I guess we're just last season we got so used to the offense just driving and making to the red zone and basically scoring. It was 8 out of 10 times they're scoring once they reach the red zone. So difficult adjustment to tweak that. Any final thoughts?
Just that these next 2 games are going to be really tough. They're 2 NFC opponents. Really good chance for the Packers. If they win against the Vikings, you kind of put the division on ice at this point, week 11, week 12, knowing the kind of lead that they already have. But Rams game is going to matter. The Cardinals dropped one yesterday, so now the Packers are back as the number 1 seed. Rams play tonight. Everybody's a 49ers fan. But, it feels like it's going to come down to the wire in the NFC. There's a lot of really good teams. So every little bit in each game is going to matter. And I think that's why, there's so much hesitation about the offense and about special teams operations, because it'll work against Seattle. It, can work against other teams, but it might not be able to work against the Rams or the Ravens or the Browns or some of the other teams they're going to finish the season against.
Yeah, they're going to have to play a more complete game than they have. Although I would say, besides the offense stalling out, they played a fairly complete game against the Seahawks, barring that couple of botched snaps that luckily bounced the Packers' way. I'm looking forward to it. We will be previewing the Vikings as normal. You'll get that dropped on Friday. If you missed it, we had Mina Kimes on to preview the Seahawks game. And I know that the game already happened, but if you just enjoy football, Mina was incredible and so insightful. So you can go back and listen to that episode. Again, Maggie and I will have our Vikings preview as normal. You can follow us on Twitter at Perri_Goldstein, at Maggie J. Loney. Please follow the podcast at PWSS Podcast. Pax What She Said on Instagram and Twitch. You already know that if you're watching this right now on Twitch. We appreciate you all joining. If you ever have things that you want us to talk about on these recap shows, let us know. Send us a DM, comment, join us, ask a question. We love to have everyone who's listening drive what our conversation is. So thank you all as always, and we'll be back next week with hopefully another Big Day Monday.
Yeah, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.